Presentation from yesterday is concerned. The Finance Minister, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, was in Parliament yesterday to deliver the mid-year budget review, and quite a lot was said. And the question that we are asking is, what was the highlight for you? And does it give you hope that we are going to end the year well? There have been announcements of cutting down on expenditure. There wasn't a request for a supplementary budget. We talked about bringing back road tolls, among other things. And, there are quite a number of people who have been reacting. So much later on the show as well, we'll activate the phone line so that you can give us a call and let us know what your thoughts and opinions are on that as well. We'll be getting some reactions from GUTA, from the Hoteliers Association, from the Importers and Exporters Association, among other stakeholders and groups. So stay tuned in for that conversation, which also will be coming up much later on. Of course, we're not missing out on the budget conversation. But for now, we're focusing on parenting. I mentioned that my guest is in the studio. Parent coach, Family Systems Associate Practitioner, Alia Nangtoma Chumberima. Good morning.
Good morning, Lantam.
How are you doing?
I'm doing
or
well.
Or should I say Dasba?
Nah.
Bibiola.
Alafibiane.
Okay. Asubamwa dia.
Nyula tea.
Tea. Tea konko.
Demen brodo. Demen
panu. Okay. As for me, kumalma.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Tina, chang to this Sam.
You are now talking.
Yeah.
You are now talking. Which of the Sam?
Sam.
Which of them?
What do you mean, which of them? Two Zafi.
Okay. That is fine. So you are a Family Systems Associate Practitioner. What is that?
So basically what I do is I help families get better. Families, functional families that are struggling to keep the family unit together.
Right.
I help them put together a plan that will help them better create a nurturing environment for their children.
And how do you do that?
So it's a whole process. So basically, we would have to come in and then have an assessment. We'll talk to you, the parents, and find out. Sometimes it's problems that are rooting from the individual's childhood, traumas that have come up from the childhood, and then there are times at which we would actually refer you to other places, other professionals to be able to see you. Sometimes you need to see a therapist to be able to heal some traumas that can help you better form a cohesive family unit.
So why is what you do important? Because we don't see or hear from a lot of people who do what you do. Being a parent coach and also being a Family Systems Associate Practitioner. Why is what you do important?
That's a good question. Well, it's really important because parenting has changed, and we realize that we parent the way we were parented. Okay. And it's especially important today because the majority of the parents right now who are parenting children between, say, 0 and 18 are either millennial parents or the Generation X parents. And most of the people in that group have come to a realization that they don't want to be parented the way they were parented. They've come to see the effects that some of the things their parents did, or some of the parenting styles their parents took up was affected them negatively. So they want to do it better. So you find that a lot of parents today, in a bit not to traumatize their children, in a bit not to hurt their children or do any harm to their children, they end up raising their hands and not doing anything at all.
They don't do anything at all. They don't parent because they don't want to be too hard on the kids.
They don't want to be too hard.
Because they remember the belt lashes that they received and
the
slaps and all of that stuff. And they don't want their children to go through that, right?
Yes. So there's a lot of confusion where parenting is concerned.
But it says spare the rod, spoil the child. That's what we're told when we're growing up. That there is foolishness attached to the heart of the child. And it is the rod of correction that will take it away.
It is true. And I usually don't like to get to the... I usually won't get into an argument about whether sparing the rod is about beating a child or not. But I like to give you information.
Right.
I like to give the parents... I like to help the parents understand the child's behavior, and then you make the decision whether beating is what you think is the best thing for the child or not.
It's not beating, it's correction.
whatever you want to call it. You decide on the best discipline methods you want to use.
Right.
So I wouldn't come up and tell you, don't beat your child or beat your child, but I help you understand. There are set different goals that a child seeks to achieve by misbehaving. Sometimes a child is just looking for attention. And you are not giving the attention. The other day, I was mentioning to a parent. The parents came and said, my child is always misbehaving. He's always breaking things, or he's always trying to make me talk. And I was like, when the child is sitting down quietly reading a book, does he get your attention? Do you talk to him? Do you play with him when he's actually in good behavior? She thought about it for a minute and said, no. Okay, so the only time you give the child attention is when the child is misbehaving, when the child is breaking something. So yes, they are going to do something to get your attention. So the reasons why children misbehave, there are not too many. And if we're able to understand why they are misbehaving, then we're able to direct their behavior positively to be able to reach the same goals that they are trying to achieve by misbehaving.
So you talked about a parenting style. That's the generation, this young generation, the Gen X, the millennials, a few Gen Zs are already, parents.
Yeah.
The kind of parenting that they had. So if you are maybe a Gen Z, you had a parent who is a millennial. If you're a millennial, you had a parent who is, Generation X and all of that. So comparing that era and the kind of tools, if I can describe it as such, that were needed, to do parenting and the way that they parented, comparing that to what we have today, right? What makes parenting today difficult? If you do a juxtaposition of the two eras, if I can describe it as such.
One of the biggest issues I find with parenting today is one, the over-dependence on screens and tablets. Parents are struggling more and more with time, because we have both parents who are both bringing in income into the home. So parents are struggling more and more with time, and so they are leaving their children to the tablets, like you said. So that's one of the biggest issues with parenting, the tablets. So as parenting coaches, one of the things that we do is try to reduce the overdependence on tablets and screens, teach you how to get the child to do other things other than the screens. Another issue with parenting today is the lack of community in raising children. When we were growing up, we had our grandmothers that were raising us. We had both mom and dad were home, or mom at least was home most of the time. But today you don't have that.
Sometimes you had aunties coming around.
Aunties,
you had
have
uncles
cousins
around, cousins,
and they all took part in the parenting process.
Even some people in the community, could correct you, right?
Yes,
and
yes.
Tell your mom that,
yes,
A, B, C, D, and then they'll take it up from there.
Exactly.
We seem not to have that anymore.
We do not. We do not. So that's another challenge in parenting. One of the things that I, as a parenting coach, advocate is that you create your own community around your child. Identify friends who have the same parenting goals as you, that you can rotate. Maybe on weekends when you are busy doing something, you can say you are comfortable with taking your child to this parent to take care of your child, or you are comfortable taking your child to this sister. So it's one of the things I advocate, for you to identify people around you that can form your community, that can help you raise your child. So that's another challenge in parenting today that I feel like we need parenting coaches to be able to help guide us in that respect.
And it's interesting that you mentioned, the screens that have become parents, because that seems to be a very big problem nowadays. And I would want us to, get into that. But even before we get into that, since we're talking about parenting styles, in this part of the world, right, in the African setting, obviously it's different from the West. And there are a lot of Western influences nowadays, but nonetheless, we still live in Africa. We still live in Ghana. We have our cultural norms, our societal values and all of that. We're a very conservative, society and all of that. So in this part of the world, the kind of parenting that you see, the trend of parenting that you see, and the kind of children too that we have growing up, with all the things that they're exposed to. If they are not exposed to it at home, they'll be exposed to it at school, or a friend, will expose them to it and all of that. Are we practicing the right kind of parenting? And do we situate parenting within our own African context, like perhaps we saw our parents do, or we need to start, incorporating some of the Western styles of parenting into what we or how we do it?
So, one of the questions I get a lot is parents asking me, Aliyah, as for our children, these things you are teaching, they won't work on our children because our children are African children. You have to treat them as such.
Yeah.
And I reflect on this, and sometimes I feel like it sounds like a form of internalized kind of racism, because what I hear from that is, are you saying that because my child is black, my child cannot learn any other way than through violence? Are you saying that because your child is black, you cannot learn, you can't have mutual respect, like black children cannot talk to each other with mutual respect, or black people cannot talk to each other with mutual respect? Are you saying because you are black, you can't show love, So I feel like that is why we are here, to be able to help parents understand that we can get our children to be the kind of children we want them to be by peaceful parenting, by parenting with respect.
Peaceful parenting and parenting with respect. So is that to say that you shouldn't, and back to the earlier, points that were made, you shouldn't beat your child, or you shouldn't discipline your child? When you say treat your child, with respect and all of that, it goes back to what you were talking about earlier, the kind of parenting we had. Discipline is a very big thing. We are big on discipline, in this part of the world, that, you have to discipline your child. Your child has to respect elders. You have to do this, you have to do that. And one of the ways that you can do that is to ensure that when they do something wrong, you punish them accordingly, right? If you have to cane them, you cane them. If you have to take out the belt, you take out the belt. That's how we were trained. And if you don't do that, your children may go wayward. Because I've also heard a lot of parents say that when we were growing up, our parents used to beat us, a lot, and discipline us and all that. We didn't understand and we were angry at them. But, growing up, now that we are adults, we are now understanding why they had to do that. Otherwise, we would have gone wayward and all of that. What do you say to that?
So, like I said, I'm not against discipline, but I like to give parents the facts so that they make informed decisions as to how they want to discipline.
So fuse that into the peaceful parenting that you are talking about. When
it comes to discipline, there's a process that goes into discipline. For instance, if I decide that one of the things that I value is honesty, I don't wait till my child lies before I teach him honesty. Okay? Your child has to understand that this is a value in this family. In our family, we do not lie. You have to set the boundary for the child and then discuss with them how they can meet the boundary before you effect discipline. Otherwise, you're not being fair. If the child you've never spoken about lying before, you've not made a conscious effort to read books about honesty, you've not made a conscious effort to, discuss it, at least. You can't just say that today the child has lied and because of that I'm beating the child or I'm disciplining the child because they lied. So, yes, discipline is important, but it's a process. You have to build a boundary before you punish for breaking the boundary.
So how do you discipline? In what circumstance do you discipline your children? Because if you want to have children who are respectful, obedient, there has to be an element, and even disciplined, there has to be an element of, as a lot of parents believe, punishment in there. So how do you discipline, okay? And how do you walk the fine line between, punishing your children and disciplining them, to make them upright?
Okay. So, you're letting me
no, say what you want to
no,
do.
You're letting me say it. Theory.
Yeah, get into it.
Okay. So, like I said, okay, yes. We have to understand that discipline basically is trying to get your child to use positive behavior to be able to get the goals that their misbehavior is trying to reach. Now, when I start talking about boundaries or I start talking about discipline, if a misbehavior occurs, okay, there's a misbehavior. There are two different forms the misbehavior can happen. It's either it's the child's problem or it's a parent's problem. Usually, a child's problem would be maybe there's an issue with his sibling. Okay, there's an issue at school with peer pressure, or there's an issue with managing their emotions. Now, if you realize that your child has any of these problems, you can't teach them this. You can't teach them the skill by disciplining them. You have to have you can't. How do I say this? You have to give the child the skills. You have to teach the child the skills, the necessary skills, to be able to deal with those problems themselves. Okay, it's not onto the child to actually. It's not onto the parents to actually help. How do I say? It's not onto the parents to actually do it for the child. So, for instance, your child got angry and they tore a book. Okay. You a parent who is not trained or who is not aware would just beat the child because they tore the book. But the tearing the book is not the issue. The issue is the dealing with the emotions, dealing with the anger. You understand? So you have to get to the
bottom, to the
bottom
root of the anger,
of the behavior
that caused the action.
That caused the action. So when you get to the fact that the child is struggling with anger issues, then you now discuss ways to be able to help the child deal with their anger.
So where does the discipline come in? Because
So-
doesn't the child also have to know that, well, if you are angry, it doesn't mean that this should be the reaction. And
Yes.
if you react this way, there
Yes,
will be
but
consequences.
have
How do you teach the
have
child
you
that?
taught me how to manage my anger? If you've taught me how to manage my anger and repeatedly I'm still doing that, then you can be physical. When I say physical, there are times when you have to step in and then give them consequences of their behavior. Okay, so for instance, you tore your book. Okay, you're not going to get this book for the rest of the term, or you're not going to get this book for the rest of the week because I'm not going to replace it.
Okay.
You know, or you may have to fix it. That's like a natural consequence. Okay? That is also a consequence that you have given. That's a discipline. You understand? That's a discipline that helps the child understand the negative effects of their behavior. Now, the reason why I don't jump straight into punishments is that sometimes when you punish regularly, the child becomes vengeful. Okay? Yeah. Sometimes you can. I mean, if you have a strong-willed child, you can get a vengeful child. So it makes you consistently try to increase the magnitude of the punishments. So the child does something today, you get angry and you punish. Then the child is like, I'm going to find a way to get back at that. Then you do something again. Then you increase your punishment, and you realize that as you increase the punishment stops working. Yes.
I see.
So usually,
what about putting
punishment-
some small fear in the child? Put the fear of God small in the child.
You really want your child to be afraid in this generation?
No, to comport himself, to be disciplined. Because and back to parenting styles, right? Because a lot of people today will say that, okay, a lot of people typically had fathers who were disciplinarians and the mothers were a bit soft, even though some also had mothers who were, quite hard, right? So you know that your dad is a disciplinarian, so there are some things that he will not tolerate. So because there are certain actions that have been taken consistently over a certain period, when you go wayward or when you do something wrong, and certain punishments that you know will be meted out to you, the fear of that sort of puts you in check, does it not?
Yes, it does. Lantam, I totally agree with you. But you also understand that children have personalities, and there are certain styles of parenting with certain kinds of personalities. You put the child in a position where they are unable to explore beyond the boxes that you have given or the boundaries that you've given.
Right.
So what I usually say to my parents is, when you do not understand your child's personality, you have to try to play it safe by giving them, like I said, if you give a child an expectation of this, if you give a child an expectation, they usually will meet it. You wouldn't have to inflict pain to be able to get them to meet those boundaries. So, yes, basically, you have to also understand your child's behavior before you say that, hey, I have to.
Okay. So let me give you a scenario, right? I saw a video on social media.
Right.
It was a video of, a living room, I think a living room and a kitchen, which had been trashed, right? So the microwave was broken, the fridge was broken, the television was damaged, glassware was broken. Why had that happened? According to the video I saw on social media, the child had thrown a tantrum, was angry because the parents took the child's smartphone, from him. And in a fit of rage or anger because the smartphone had been taken, went on a rampage and destroyed things in the house. As a parent, how do you handle that?
Was this in Africa?
No, this was not in Africa.
So you see, that's one of the things.
This was not in Africa.
You see,
so it goes to the earlier question of, the Western style of parenting and the African style of parenting.
Yes.
Which one do we go for?
Yes.
Or even if we are going to do a hybrid, how do we do the two? So in a scenario like that, what do you do as a parent?
The Western culture is so the Western culture is more they have more open communication and free communication more than us. And for us, we value respect when we are communicating with elders.
Yes.
And
respect is a big thing.
That's one of my problems with parenting. Parents picking information hook, line, and sinker from parenting coaches, on Instagram and all those things. Often it's not situated in our local context. So sometimes you find that they are teaching parenting things that won't work. When I was training as a parenting coach, I was in a class of 10 people and all of them were white. I was the only black person. So often they would bring up, I was the only African actually.
The only African.
So they'll bring up scenarios and experiences, and I'm like, I cannot relate. Like in my culture, my child would never.
You even dare.
You wouldn't even dare
think about it.
So it's a thing of value. Okay, it's a thing of what's the culture values.
Right.
Okay, and those things are passed down. Yeah, I mean, I don't see that happening in a Ghanaian home. A child goes on a rampage and goes around hitting.
Yeah, so if something like that happened, okay, so what mistakes, right? What mistakes? Because there are some parents too who are very, laissez-faire, when it comes to parenting, and they have children that people describe as spoiled children,
entitled,
right? Entitled, and spoiled.
It stems from permissive parenting.
Yes, and I want us to dovetail into styles of parenting. So, what would a parent do wrong in parenting their child that will result in that kind of behavior?
Okay, so let me just briefly talk about permissive parenting style. For a child to be like that means you are.
So let's dovetail into the various
yes.
parenting styles.
So we have a permissive parenting style, and the permissive parenting style, you give the child all they want. The child has so much freedom. He does what they want when they want. They sleep when they want. They only have to ask, "Mommy, I want this," and then you give it. When a child doesn't have boundaries, you have to have certain boundaries in your home. There has to be boundaries around privacy. When you're entering a room, knock on the door. There has to be things that you value in your home that you turn into boundaries. There has to be boundaries around screen time. You are not allowed a screen on school days. You are only allowed screen on weekends. There should be boundaries around personal space. When you are picking something that doesn't belong to you, ask. These are rules that should go without saying in a home.
So how do you establish those rules? How do you go about it?
So
even at what point do you start to teach your children these things?
As soon as a child is born, you have to start setting boundaries. Okay, maybe when the child is 0 to 6, or 0 to 4 or 0 to 3, what you need to do is physically remove the child from boundaries. Physically use physically lead when it comes to taking boundaries. So, for instance, you don't want the child playing around the iron. Okay, remove the iron from the child's space. You want the child to clean up, to keep their room clean, and every time they are messing up the room, reduce the number of toys they have in their room. Don't simplify it so that it's easy for them to clean. You want the child to
You want the child to be in a position to know that I don't do this, I don't do that.
yes.
In our house, we do things this way, we do things that way.
Yes, like I said, you have to start early. Okay, start early so that the child knows that there are rules in the house. You can't do anything that you want. And another thing that makes it easy for a child to break boundaries is if you are not consistent. Okay, if you set a boundary and you are not consistent.
Consistency.
So you have a rule in your house that no Fanta after 4 p.m. And then your child comes at 4 p.m. and says, "Mommy, can I have some Fanta?" And you say no. She says, "Please, Mommy, please." And you say yes.
Okay.
What you have done is you've sold yourself short. The child knows that I can manipulate
you.
Okay. So when and children are very smart. They are able to use one scenario and enter into
Very manipulative.
So once you have done that once, then they feel like I can manipulate my mother anywhere else.
They start scheming.
So when it comes to any other boundary, they just come and say please, or they start to argue. Let your no be no. If I say no, it's no.
So that it's registered in the brain.
And it's consistent. It's not no based on, it's not situational. The no is not situational.
If it's no, it's no. If you don't do it, you don't do it.
Yeah, there's no tablets on weekdays. Even when they don't have homework. You hold the boundary. Because they can come and say, "Oh, Mommy, there's no homework today. Can I just go and watch my tablet just a little bit?" My daughter has this thing. She says, Mommy, I don't want to worry you. I know you are so tired from work. I don't want to worry you. Let me just go and watch for just a few minutes. You know, she's pushing boundaries because she's trying to see how much she can get out of you.
But then you
now,
say
if you give her an inch there, you are done.
So there has to be that consistency. So you talked about the permissive style of parenting. What are the repercussions of that? Or what are the consequences or effects of the permissive style?
A permissive parent will raise a child who is entitled. They feel that the sun rises and sets on their butts. They go into the work environment and they feel like everything should happen their way. And they don't have to be held accountable for anything. Now, when the world holds them accountable for something, then they throw tantrums. Okay, that is one of the telltale signs of a child who was brought up in a permissive home. That's what we call a spoiled child.
So, what is the effect of that on the child? Of course, we know the consequence for the parent, but for the child.
That's what I mean. That's
when
what
the child.
That's what happens
for the child's development, right? And the child's interaction with the outside world. What's the?
I was actually talking about the effects of the child on the child, on the outside world.
Yeah.
They grow up to be children who are unable to. When you even put them in an environment where you are holding them accountable, they throw tantrums. They are angry because you have asked them a question about maybe where they have been. He's a husband, and then you are asking him where has he been to. He's never had to answer to anybody. Why does he have to answer to you? So
it affects even the adulthood.
It affects them. I mean, throughout.
Right. So the permissive style. So what other style of parenting is there?
So we have the authoritarian style. That's the extreme.
That's the one we are used to.
That's the extreme of the permissive style.
Can it also be called the African style? The African dad style?
I don't even think it's only African. I mean, I think Asians do it. The Hispanics do it. This is like the this is the one we are used to. Yeah. So the authoritarian style, you would have a very good behaved child, okay, but a child who is very afraid to make mistakes, a child who is not confident, a child who is afraid to think outside the box because they are really, really scared to, they don't want to try because they are afraid that they will fail. Now, what authoritarian parents do is they take the control of life out from away from the child. The child has no control over what they do. They have no control. The parent is there to keep you in check. If you don't do this, I'll beat you. If you don't do this, the parent is there. So the child has no practice in exercising control. So when they grow up, and then you put them into an environment where they there is no boundary, like there's freedom, then they just can't handle it. Okay, they are just unable to handle it. Then you'll see, yeah, they don't thrive very well.
So the authoritarian style, right? When you look at the effects of it, on the child, right? When they grow up, it affects what, their confidence?
It affects their confidence.
They become what?
They are
Timid?
not self-starters.
So when they become adults, right? Let's say, and they even get into relationships on their own and all of that. What kind of effect, does that have?
So, authoritarian parenting style can cause some trauma, and trauma repeats itself. Okay, so a child brought up in an authoritarian home, it feels like the only time I have power over somebody is when I'm bigger than the person or older than the person. So then when they are bigger, like when they in a home,
When they're
I
in a
feel like I'm a
position of
husband.
authority.
Then I feel like I have to inflict pain or show people my power, show people how strong I am.
Yeah.
Because I spent all my life hiding under the shadow. So this is my time to shine. And they can overdo it.
Interesting. So what other parenting styles are
So
there?
we have authoritative, which is not authoritarian. The
Okay.
authoritative parent is a parent
Permissive, authoritarian,
and authoritative.
and then now authoritative.
Yes.
Okay.
So the authoritative strikes a balance between authoritarian and permissive. Okay. So I give you boundaries, and I allow you room to operate within the boundaries. Can I give you a very good example of what a boundary is? So, for instance, I give you a boundary. I tell you, Kofi or Lantam, I have friends coming over to the house on Saturday. I need your room to be cleaned by Friday. Today is Wednesday. So you have between today and Friday to figure out how to clean your room. So you can either decide to wait until Friday and clean everything at once, or you can do it bits by bits until Friday. So what I've done is I've allowed you room to exercise your control over what you can do.
Right.
Okay.
Even though I've exhibited a level of authority.
I have exhibited a level of authority,
Right.
and I've given you a boundary.
Right.
So I've set what my baseline for my baseline expectation for your behavior, and I've given you room to operate.
So an authoritarian style would be what? Clean your room and clean it now.
Clean your room now. I need you to clean your room now, or else they give you consequences.
And if you don't, then the consequence follows.
Exactly.
Okay. But with the authoritative, I'm telling you to clean your room, but I'm giving you a time frame.
And I'm allowing you to exercise your discretion. I'm allowing you to bring together your planning skills, your organizational skills. You know, everything comes together.
And is there another parenting style? So permissive, authoritarian, authoritative.
Yes.
So for the authoritarian, authoritative, right?
Okay.
That's what we're just discussing,
Yes.
right? So for that, of course, we've been discussing, the effects of all of that. So what kind of child are you getting or raising with that kind, with that style?
That
of
goes
parenting?
without saying. That you raise a child who has exercised their executive function skills. Okay? Executive function is a part of the brain that helps you basically plan your life. That's the CEO of your brain. So, Lantam, if you came to work today and you have your boss having to come and tell you, Lantam, I want you to discuss this at this time, and this is what I want you to discuss, A, B, C, D. If your boss doesn't tell you that you're not able to function, then it means that you are unable to take initiative. And being able to take initiative is a product of executive function.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And these are skills that are learned in your childhood. Okay? If, for instance, you switch to a different program, and you are unable to move on to the next program, like you are still stuck on this parenting program, you are not able to switch your brain, it's a lapse in your executive function skills. And these are skills that are learned in your childhood. And all these things are practiced when you're able to do authoritative parenting style effectively. So there's a lot of even planning, how to plan your life. Okay, so I have to move from point A to point Z. What do I need to do first? I need to clean my bedroom. Do I pick my toys first? Do I clean the bed first? Do I scrub the bathroom first? All that kind of planning. If I scrub the bathroom before I clean the room, will the water from the bathroom wet the room? Should I sweep first before so many things come into planning, and all those things are skills that you have to learn.
Is there another style of parenting apart from these three?
Yes, there's a fourth style of parenting, but I don't even talk about that because it's
It's not relevant to our setting.
It's a parent that just is not there. You are not doing anything.
An absent parent.
An absent parent.
Absent parenting style.
Yes, you
are just there.
There.
So of these three, authoritative is the best, I assume, or should there be some sort of hybrid, some sort of blend?
So authoritative is the hybrid. That's the blend.
Okay.
It blends freedom. It blends love with rules. Okay, so that's what the hybrid.
So that's
is.
the best style of parenting.
Yes. So in my practice, I usually, most parents think they are probably doing the authoritative style of parenting. So in my practice, I have an assessment I give you, and then you go through the assessment and you can tell clearly where your parenting style is, and then I try to advise you on what to do to bring your parenting style up to date. Yeah.
So is that the parenting style that best suits our cultural context? The our cultural norms, our societal norms, how we are conservative, society, and all of that. Is the authoritative style the kind of parenting style that best suits us?
So I think the authoritative style suits every culture, okay? It's just your ability as a parent to situate it in your culture.
Right. So how do you do that?
For instance, it's the expectations you set for the child. Last year, my children and I went to the States.
I like the way you always glow when you talk about your children.
My children, I took my children to the States for the holidays, and we were together with some Caucasians, white people, and their parents will call them and they'll say, "What, mommy? What, daddy?" And I realized that after like 1 week, when I call my daughter, she also says, "What, mommy?" And so I called her. I was like, "And that's new. Is that how we respond in Ghana when somebody calls you?" Then she said, "No, mommy." So how do you respond in Ghana? She said, when somebody calls you, say, "Yes, mommy," or "Yes, daddy."
The tone.
The tone counts,
the tone,
and the
body
wording
language,
counts.
and the body. Yeah.
So those things are things that you set, like I mentioned it earlier, you set as what you value as your home. What is your culture in your home?
Right.
Okay. So you don't just let everything fly. You teach your children, this is how we do it here. Yeah.
So how do you identify, and adapt your parenting style to fit the cultural context as you have been, trying to explain to us? How do you do that?
So, first of all, I think you have to identify what you value. Okay. What do you value as an individual?
So what do you value? What your values are?
What are your values?
Right.
Is your value honesty? Is your value respect? Is your value service? Is your value excellence?
Or it can be all of them.
If you identify what your value is, you have to be able to communicate it to the child in such a way that they understand the reasons why that value or those values are important to you.
Right.
Okay. So if you're able to communicate why those values are important to you, then you have to model it.
Right.
It's not just about communicating. You have to model it so that the child sees that my mom is not just saying it, because like it or not, the children learn more by seeing
So
than
you
by
lead by example,
you live by
right?
example.
You emulate it.
Yes. I have a video that I put on social media the other day, and I was talking about you can't tell your child that you value honesty when somebody came to visit, and then you told mommy to tell the
You
person
tell her
that
I'm not there.
I'm not there.
The day the child will say, my mother says I should come and tell you I'm not there.
Exactly. You may think,
That is
oh,
when you see.
it's just funny. You may think it's funny, but the child has learned the lesson.
Okay.
Oh, my mother says she values honesty, but not really.
Because when this person came, she told me to go and tell the person
Exactly.
that
And
she's
things
not
are
there.
pretty black and white with children.
Yeah.
There's no middle, there's no gray area. Mommy lied. So lying must be a normal thing in this society. So let me continue to do it. So you model the things that you value.
Right.
If you say you respect, your child has to hear you speaking to him respectfully. Yes. If you value respect.
How do you speak respectfully to your child?
Okay. Lantam.
Yeah.
If you were a child and I came and said, Lantam, pick this thing or I'll beat you, would you say that is respect?
You are showing your authority.
Also, would you call it respect? I'm not modeling respect. But if I came and said, Lantam, I need you to pick this for me. I need you to pick this for me because am I giving a good example? Please let me give you another example.
Oh, I need you to pick
Please.
this from here because it makes the place look unsightly. So pick it up from there.
Yes. Or
So how do you, so as a parent, right? How do you communicate something like that, to your child?
Okay.
Authoritatively, but respectfully.
So let me give you a very good example. So your child is learning how to ride a bike, and you want the child to ride the bike on the street, but you also know that the street is unsafe for the child. An authoritative parent will say, "You ride the bike. If you continue riding the bike, if I find you ride on the side pavement, if I find you on the main road, I'll take the bicycle from you, and you will never get it again."
That's authoritative.
That's
An authoritarian.
That's authoritarian.
Yeah.
I'll take the bicycle from you and you'll never get it again. Okay. Now, once you say that, a child is thinking, "Hey, let me write. Let me see if she means it." You are testing. You are pushing, virtually pushing the child to. But if you say, "Okay, Lantam, we are riding the bike today on the side pavements. If you go into the main road, then I know that you are ready to stop riding."
So the way you communicate.
The way you communicate.
Even the tone.
I know you are ready to stop riding. So you are giving the child control of their actions. Okay. So if you enter into the main road, I know you are ready to stop riding.
Okay. So if you enter the main road and I see, then okay, you are ready to stop riding. So stop riding. So then when the action follows,
So
it has registered.
And they've already seen that they did it. So
Okay.
they are supposed to be held accountable for their actions.
Right. So that's interesting. That's interesting. Parenting is not easy.
No, it's not. It's not. It's a full-time job, and it's a learned job.
Okay,
It's
so
not a job that it's not something you know instinctively. You need to have some training in parenting, and that's why parents coaches are available to help you through the journey.
right. So I mean, with all of this that you have talked about, for nowadays the typical Ghanaian setting where mommy's working, daddy's working, we take you to school, daddy comes home late, mommy comes home maybe a little bit early or maybe comes home late. But I mean, both parents are coming home late. Maybe one will arrive before the other. Someone else picks them up from school, maybe a driver, and then brings them home. They're in the care of maybe a caretaker right up till the evening before, the parents come in, and they have very little time, with the children, just because of the busy lives that the parents lead. Because obviously they're trying to make ends meet and cater for these same children. What is the danger of that kind of situation, right? And two questions. And what should parents like that be doing to be more effective parents?
So, if you are not present in your child's life, you stand the chance of losing your authority over the child, or your influence. Let me use the word influence over the child.
Yeah.
And in today's world, you need all the influence to be able to help your child navigate the nooks and crannies of of this life. So, what I would advise is, it doesn't take much. If you can put aside 15 minutes every day, it doesn't matter the time of the day, but put aside 15 minutes of your day, no tablets, no phones, no TVs, just pure connection with your child. Let your child take the lead in the friendship. It's not you coming to say that, Kofi, let's play cards, or let's just sit with the child, allow the child to take the lead in the conversation, allow the child to take the lead in whatever activity they want to do. Just take that 15 minutes to bond every day. You'll be amazed how much influence you'll have over your child's life.
Right.
There's so many things that, like I mentioned earlier, building a community around your child is important, because we can't do it alone. So it's also very important for you to select the people who are going to function within your community, and figure out what roles you are going to give each of them, and decide to what extent they will interact with your children, and what training you want them to have to be able to have the same parenting goals as you. You understand? So if it's a nanny that you want, that's taking care of your child when you are not around, make sure this nanny has some training. Make sure you are teaching the nanny what to do when you are not around. And I'm not saying teach the nanny what to do in terms of caring, that's cooking or eating,
But in terms of the values.
in terms of the values, in terms of setting boundaries, make sure your community members are informed. Yeah.
So, in all of this, and we'll be wrapping up our conversation very soon, but a couple of questions. So, with all that we have discussed, who then is a good parent? When we say someone is a good parent, what are the qualities of a good? I know it's relative. Yeah. I know it's relative, but how would you describe a good parent?
My mentor in parents coaching says that we are all, right now, it seems like it's all playing games, but we are all writing exams. It is when your child is 18 that they will actually give you your report card. So right now it looks like, you are doing a lot of things that don't seem like they make sense. But I feel like a good parent is a parent that, one, gives room for their child to make mistakes, but still is there to offer guidance. A parent who sets boundaries, but yet gives them freedom of choice within those boundaries. A parent who loves their child and indulges their child, but still knows when you can't give it all.
Right.
When to shorten the hand.
Right.
So that the child learns how to learn some level of resilience, some form of resilience. Yes, so I think that's what a good parent is.
That's what a good parent is. So this is what we should be aspiring for. Yeah?
Yes, please.
Those of us who are not yet parents.
Yes, please.
And those who are already parents. Okay. You talked about understanding your child's personality is one of the keys to being an effective parent, right? So how do you do that as well? Understanding your child's personality, and when you get a hang on your child's personality, then you know how to handle them.
So I think all of us we really know our children. So that's one of the things I also do in my practice. I help you do some assessments of your child over time,
right,
for you to understand what your child's reactions are likely to be in certain scenarios. And these inform you about the personality of the child and allows you to tailor your parenting style to suit that particular personality. So, yeah, personality definitely does have a play in the way you parent, but we try to make it as simple as possible in our practice. So,
Okay. So, in wrapping this up, I feel like there's so much more to explore, but we just don't have enough time to get into all of it. So, I'm sure we'll see you here again. But in wrapping up, to the parents out there, I know you've already, said a lot, but what would be your final word to all parents who are listening right now?
So there's one thing I always say when I am coaching my parents. I always say, if I can convince you to pick up your cane less and understand your child's behavior more, then I think my job has done. So the one thing I want to say to parents is there are reasons that your children behave the way they behave. If you get to the root causes of their reasons for their behavior, you can raise better children.
Very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And how can, people follow your work and stay updated on your latest parenting tips? I know you do a lot of that on social media. So how do people do that?
So I'm on Facebook, on Aliyah Nantogma. I'm on Instagram, as Aliyah Nantogma. I have a school called Orange Feather Community School.
Okay.
Where I do some consulting
Right.
for some of my parents, and yeah.
Where can we find the school?
The school is in Ashongman Estates.
Okay.
Okay, just close to the Melcom.
All right.
So
Aliyah Nantoma on Facebook
and Aliyah Nantogma on Instagram.
On Instagram.
Yes.
Aliyah spelled ALIA.
Right.
NANTOGMA. Okay.
Right.
So across these two social media platforms.
Right.
Right. You have an email address?
Yes. My email is Aliyah Nantogma, ALIANANTOG @gmail.com.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lantam, for having me.
Our parent coach.
Thank you.
Yes, parent coach, family systems associate practitioner. Yeah, you're a big woman.
Not really.
You're a big woman. There aren't a lot of people like you. We hope to see you again.
Yes, I'll definitely come whenever you call.
You want to say hello to your children. You mentioned them a lot, and I saw the glow, in your eyes. Anytime you mentioned your children, you always smile. I'm sure they are very well behaved.
They try. We're still in the process of testing boundaries and setting boundaries, but they try. They are good kids. I'm blessed.
All right. Well, thank you very much. So you've heard us speak to Aliyah Nantoma, and I think this was a good discussion. And so if you're a parent out there, these are some of the things that you should be, keeping in mind. The next time, the topic we'll be talking about will be, capital punishment. To beat or not to beat? That is the question. Yes, but you're still tuned into The Morning Star here on Star 103.5 FM.